And let's get some reaction to the Iranian leader's remarks now about keeping the Strait of Hormuz locked down and leveraging that. Jim Krane is a fellow with Middle East Energy Studies at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy, and we have reached him in Houston. Good timing to be able to get a chance to speak to you as soon as we're hearing from the new leadership in Iran about, the path forward here, and talk immediately in that statement about leveraging the Strait of Hormuz and keeping that closed going forward. What are you taking away from the very beginnings of this message that we're hearing from Mujtaba Khamenei?
Yeah, hi. Well, good morning. Great to be here. Sounds like a bit like we're going to have more of the same. So, the strait has been closed now for a while. Very few ships getting through. I think a lot of us were surprised at how easily Iran was able to do that. I'm also a bit surprised at the price shock, on the oil prices has been fairly minor so far. I mean, the market's lost about 10 million barrels a day of oil. And it's, that's the biggest outage ever that Iran is now causing. I think, Iran has given the world a sharp demonstration of, how important that strait is, how central it is to the global economy for oil and gas and petrochemicals and fertilizers and for even growing food, and its ability to shut it. Also, now I think nobody questions that Iran can shut the strait and cause havoc by doing that. And I should mention that the tactics that it's using right now are fairly minor. I think about 14 or so ships have been hit around the strait, inside it and outside it. But Iran's got a lot of dry powder. There's a lot more that it could do. It's got inflatable boats that can be weaponized. It can use limpet mines as it has in the past, anti-ship missiles as it has in the 80s. It can also use mines. We've heard that Iran has laid already some mines, but Iran is still using the strait. It's able to get some oil out of the strait. So I think it's probably being cautious about that for now. But it's pretty easy to deter, I think, ship owners, insurers, crews, et cetera, from using the strait. And that's what we're seeing.
As you say, so far the effect of this has been relatively minor. I mean, we've seen a huge jump in the price, but nothing compared to what we're hearing warnings about from, in particular, Qatar's energy minister predicting that this could get oil to $150 a barrel, saying it could bring down the economies of the world. When you hear the statement from the new supreme leader saying we need to leverage this, we need to keep this and stay the course, what are you looking for in terms of the long-term effect?
So on gas, I mean, what the Qataris are talking about, yes. So it says, I guess there's, if you're looking at oil and gas, I think look at them separately. So, with oil, there's a lot of oil in storage right now. The IEA, the International Energy Agency, has announced that it's going to start releasing some of that oil to calm prices, and we're seeing some of that taking effect. 400 million barrels from various strategic petroleum reserves around the world, including the U.S., which is, it's only half full. So, ours is going to be, a bit smaller than it might have otherwise been. So that's going to help. But natural gas is much harder to store. And the shortages in the gas market, are going to be more acute. So the Strait of Hormuz, it channels about 20% of global LNG, along with 20% of global oil, right? So all of that LNG, liquefied natural gas, has been lost to the market. Qatar has shut down completely its huge LNG facility at Ras Laffan, I think probably to to say to the Iranians, hey, please don't shoot at this infrastructure. We want to prevent it from being damaged. But LNG prices are way up. We're seeing, shortages already pretty acute in Pakistan and Bangladesh. That's probably going to lead to some power outages because they don't have great substitutes for that. So, and other countries will start seeing that soon. So oil, I think it'll take a little while for that to really have a big effect on prices. But on gas, it's already happening.
There's more that passes through this strait than oil and gas. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other effects that we're going to start seeing? I mean, even this morning, we've been talking about effects on farmers here in Canada because of fertilizer.
Yeah, that's right. So urea, ammonia, and sulfur, so three key ingredients in fertilizer. Who knew that the Gulf was so important for all three of those? I mean, especially sulfur. About 45% of the global supply of sulfur, that the Gulf countries produce, their highly sulfuric oil and gas. They take it out of that and then they sell it for other things. It's used in farming and as an input in fertilizer, but it's also used in making chips, making sulfuric acid that is used in computer chip making. It's also used in refining all sorts of metals, from ores, so copper, nickel, cobalt, etc. So having a shortage of sulfur is, is cascading into, prices of other commodities and, maybe even into, prices of chips, etc. In the future. Petrochemicals, they're huge exporters of petchems that also come out of the Gulf. That's, the precursors for plastics. We could see some effects there. Aluminum, they're huge aluminum production in the Gulf. That's all bottled up right now. So yeah, that's it's a critical node in the global economy, and the loss of access to that single strait is just causing cascading effects across the global economy.
Jim, great to have you in line to talk to us this morning as we learn a little bit more about the regime's strategy going forward in this conflict. We appreciate your time. Hope we get to chat again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks.